My mother-in-law casually dropped a bombshell on me, leaving me stunned. We're going to be living together now. We just remodeled the house into a duplex for convenience. The property is in your name, right, Emma? Sorry to bother you, but could you please cover the $80,000 remodeling bill? As she and my husband laughed triumphantly, I felt a surge of resolve. I knew it was time to reveal the truth, a truth even my husband didn't know, and I had the evidence to prove it. I'm Emma Davis, 26, living a bit away from downtown in a nature-filled area. I work an office job and draw illustrations as a hobby, which I now share on social media. I enjoy reading the comments daily. My husband, who is 3 years older, and I are happily settled in an old farmhouse we bought right after our wedding. However, there's one recurring issue, a monthly visitor who always gives me a headache. Emma, I'm here. Please open up quickly. The persistent bang on the sliding door jolted me into action. Mother-in-law, I'll open it right away, I called out, even though there was a perfectly good doorbell right next to the door. I forced a smile as I opened the sliding door to see her standing there, looking tired from waiting, clutching a large bag. There are so many bugs around here. It's so annoying. Is George still at work? Poor thing. Even on a Saturday. Oh, I brought some of his favorite food. As she chattered rapidly, I managed a strained smile while letting her in. My mother-in-law, who visits once a month, is my husband's mother and insists on taking care of him even after our marriage. I'm grateful for her help, though it comes with its own set of challenges. The last time she visited, she rearranged the food in the fridge, making me scramble for ingredients the next morning. Before we married, my husband had said, if my parents ever need care, we'll live together. I want you to understand that. Though the thought of giving up our beloved farmhouse was disappointing, I accepted it. What bothered me more was the idea of living with my mother-in-law full-time. It's a thought that casts a shadow over my mood. 2 years into our farmhouse life, I learned that my father-in-law had slipped on the stairs and broken his leg. They will need our help from now on. Let's live together, just as we discussed before our marriage, my husband said. Yes, I'm worried too, so I think it's a good idea. Can I continue my drawing hobby? I asked, concerned about how this move might affect my creative time. Though I was worried about my father-in-law's health, I agreed to move in together. Still, I couldn't shake the anxiety about losing time for my drawing hobby amidst the demands of housework and caregiving. Whether he was aware of my anxiety or not, my husband simply said, I want you to prioritize the house, and left for his office. Left alone in my room, I felt like I was starting to give up on my selfish husband. As I reviewed my illustrations, one by one, I tried to sort through my feelings. Just as I had come to terms with living with them, an unexpected event threw everything into chaos. While working at my job, I suddenly experienced numbness in my hands and feet, and was overwhelmed by intense dizziness. I collapsed, thanks to a colleague who quickly called an ambulance. My life was not in immediate danger, but medical tests revealed I had suffered a stroke at a young age. Despite having been warned about high blood pressure in previous health checks, I regretted neglecting it. The entire process from diagnosis to hospitalization, including surgery and rehabilitation, took about 2 months. During this time, it became clear how little concern my husband had shown for my condition. Once I was diagnosed, I called my husband with trembling hands. His response was disheartening. I see. So, living together will be postponed, huh? I couldn't process the fact that his main concern was the delay in moving in with my in-laws, not my health. With my father-in-law still hospitalized with his fracture, there was no immediate need for caregiving, which was a small blessing, allowing me to focus on my treatment. Also, since we don't have children, there were no additional worries there. Suddenly, I remember my mother-in-law's frequent comments about wanting to see a grandchild soon. I shook off the thought and picked up my sketchbook. Recently, I'd been too busy preparing for the move and dealing with medical issues to focus on my illustrations. I realized that once we moved in with my in-laws, I likely have even less time to draw. I decided to view this hospitalization period as a precious gift of free time and resolved to fully enjoy my hobby. When this time was over, I vowed to do my best for my husband and in-laws, whether it was housework or anything else. The 2-month hospital stay passed quickly, and finally, the discharge day arrived. My husband casually offered to pick me up, but wanting some time alone before returning home, I declined, feeling a bit guilty. As I rode the bus home, the familiar landscape outside the window reminded me that I was nearing my destination. The sunlight filtering through the lush green leaves was dazzling, filling me with a bittersweet sense of farewell to this natural haven. My in-laws' house, located closer to the city center, promised a major shift in my life. Feeling a touch of loneliness, I slowly disembarked at my familiar bus stop. As I approached what I thought was my soon-to-be farewell home, I was taken aback by an unexpected sight. Instead of the beloved old house I had known, there stood a completely unfamiliar residence. After being in the hospital for about 2 months, I checked my bearings and surroundings, but it was clear that this was indeed the right location. With no other options, I hesitantly pressed the intercom button. A familiar voice responded, "Yes, unmistakably my husband's." Still in a state of confusion, I replied softly, "It's Michelle." The front door creaked open, and my husband, dressed casually, emerged. "Ah, welcome home. You're back earlier than I expected. I took the day off today. I could have picked you up." I interrupted him, still grappling with disbelief. "George, what happened to our house? Why has it changed so much?" Despite my anxiety, George simply replied with a vague, "Huh, what's up? What happened?" showing no intention of addressing my question. Just then, I heard laughter coming from inside the house. With a sinking feeling, I pushed past my husband and headed toward the living room. When I opened the unfamiliar door leading to the living room, I was met with the sight of my mother-in-law lounging on the couch, watching TV and laughing heartily while clutching her stomach. "Why is my mother-in-law in this house?" I blurted out in confusion. "Oh, Michelle, welcome back. Hospital stays can be long, but don't worry, I took care of the house while you were gone," she said nonchalantly. I was puzzled by her comment about taking care of the house. Could it be chores she was referring to? An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me as I pressed her for answers. "Why has the old house changed so much?" I demanded. Without a shred of remorse, she cheerfully explained, "Well, we're all going to live together, right? So I just remodeled it into a duplex to make it more comfortable." The phrase, "just remodeled it into a duplex," echoed in my mind. I had expected my mother-in-law to be intrusive, but I never anticipated her remodeling the house without permission. And weren't we supposed to be moving into my in-laws' house, closer to the city center? I recalled her frequent complaints about the bugs and the distance from the station during her visits. Despite that, why had so many things changed? "Oh, and there's one more important thing I need to tell you," my mother-in-law said, turning off the TV with a grin. "The remodeling cost a bit. I believe the title to this house is under your name, Michelle, so could you handle the payment?" With a chuckle, and no trace of apology, she added, "It's $80,000, her smile widening." "Remodeling cost the title to this house, $80,000, I repeated in disbelief, feeling as if I'd been punched in the gut. My legs began to tremble, and I could only stare at her, speechless. My mother-in-law continued to laugh fearlessly, while George, who had been at the entrance, quietly slipped into the living room. When I saw George, my feet instinctively moved toward him, clinging to a faint hope that he would support me. I relayed my mother-in-law's demands to him, desperately seeking a sympathetic reaction. But his response was cold and indifferent. "Well, that's about right. Take care of it, will you?" Of course, this is the kind of man he is. When I had a stroke, he was more concerned about our living arrangements than my health. He's the kind of man who stops if his mother says green means stop and goes if she says red means go, always thinking his mother is right. The growing discomfort and dissatisfaction with my husband boiled over. I felt a deep, burning resolve. "I'm done with this family. I'll leave them behind." "I understand now, George. I'm going to divorce you and your mother." "No, Cecilia, handle the renovation costs yourself." With that, I turned on my heel and headed for the door, but they weren't ready to let me go so easily. "I've been losing interest in you anyway, so it's no big deal. But remember, this house is in your name, Emma, so you have a responsibility to pay." "That's right. Feel free to leave, but settle your dues first," they insisted. Their selfishness left me astonished, and I sighed in exasperation. I imagined them smirking, reveling in their perceived victory, but I refused to look back. Standing tall, I said, "You keep saying the house is in my name, George, but did you forget that ownership has been transferred to you?" Their laughter halted abruptly, replaced by visible panic as I revealed the truth. They laughed it off, dismissing my claim as a ploy to avoid payment. I reminded them that George had specifically asked me to transfer the property to his name when we married because he didn't want it in his wife's name for appearances. Since I didn't care about the property title, I had complied immediately. The sudden shift in their demeanor confirmed their realization of the truth. The two who had been so complacent now displayed growing panic. "I don't recall saying such a thing. There's no proof anyway," George said, trying to deflect. Anticipating this, I turned back to face them, walked past them, and opened a drawer in a shelf from our old house. "Let's see, it should be around now. Here it is," I said as I rummaged through the drawer. I pulled out the document showing the property and house ownership details and held it up for them to see. pointing to the section indicating that the ownership was now in George's name. I watched as his face drained of color. That's fraud. I never thought you'd actually do it, and I certainly can't pay $80,000, he shouted, his voice filled with panic. Disgusted by his reaction, I said, since having a decent conversation seems impossible, let's handle this through lawyers from now on. Cecilia, your son is in quite a bind, so please take good care of him from now on. With that, I gave a final, cold smite to my mother-in-law, who stood there stunned, and turned my back on them, leaving their home for good. Despite several calls from my husband, I ignored him and opted to communicate formally through a lawyer. Given our already strained relationship, and the issues with my mother-in-law, the divorce was settled without complications. Regarding George's claim that the name change was fraud, it was determined that there was an agreement since the property title had been changed at our marriage 2 years ago. My lawyer reassured me with a smile that there was nothing fraudulent or illegal about the name change. With that confirmation, all the lingering uncertainty I had felt was resolved. It seemed that the cost of renovating the house, which my husband had insisted would be my responsibility, would indeed be covered entirely by me upon my hospital discharge. I couldn't help but appreciate the spiteful irony of the situation. After enduring surgery and rehabilitation, I was finally discharged from the hospital, only to be thrust into a new kind of hell. The house was in my husband's name, making it his responsibility to cover the renovation costs. Ultimately, he was left in financial ruin, and I secured alimony as part of the divorce settlement. My husband, unable to repay the massive sum he owed, was forced to borrow from dubious source, or perhaps he didn't manage to borrow at all. During the tumultuous period with my husband and mother-in-law, I received an apology from my father-in-law, Bob, who was still recovering from his broken leg. He said, "I'm sorry for my wife's and son's behavior." Though it seemed Bob wasn't directly involved in the mess, he had ignored both his wife and my cold husband throughout our marriage. After a brief response to Bob's message, I decided to sever all ties with that family and start anew. Since then, my health has steadily improved, and I've returned to work. While I used to draw illustrations cautiously, under my husband's watchful eye, I now have the freedom to immerse myself fully in my art. What began as a hobby has blossomed into a career, with job offers flooding, and from my social media platforms where I share my work. Today, I'm on my way to view an old farmhouse in a quaint rural town. My dream is to purchase this farmhouse with my alimony and savings and open an art studio. As I travel by bus, I reflect on the day I left the hospital, a turning point that changed my life forever. The natural beauty outside, just as vibrant as that day, fills me with anticipation. The sunlight sparkling through the leaves fills me with excitement for the new chapter that lies ahead.